Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. I want to start today off little bit of a rant on our healthcare system. Again, as you know, not a huge fan of the monopolization of healthcare, not fond of how large these insurance companies, how large these healthcare companies have gotten with care and cost and all of that stuff. Not seem to be as much of a priority as one would think it should be. But here I sit, torn quad tendon, patellar tendonitis, whole knee not happy. Let's just go with that. Knee not happy, so I go and see my doctor, and the doctor says, this is the course of treatment. We're going to do this. You're going to be off for several weeks off of work. Get comfortable. Prescribe some drugs and a brace. And I'm going, what kind of brace? Well, basically an immobilizer, but not just any immobilizer. I don't. There was a name to it. Like a T this or something. And it's fancy. Wow, it's very nice. In fact, tweeted out a picture of it today saying, look what I got, brand new, custom fit. So as the guy who's fitting me for this contraption, I'm asking him questions. Why this one? Last time I was in one of these, it was, back in high school when I tore up a knee, they gave you that Velcro one with the little metal sides, and you just strapped it on, and it probably $20 did you well. How much is this monstrosity? How much? No, understand. This is where the right would tell you, we need skin in the game and all that. I have the best health care you're going to find. I'm not going to pay a dime for this because our health care is good. It's going to cover. I paid my copay. That's all I'm going to see of this bill. I already know that. I know that going in. The doctor has said, hey, you need this particular brace. Okay. So I go, how much is this contraption? So the person who was fitting for me said, well, we charge the insurance company something like $900. I'm going, really? $900? Really? And I'm sitting here thinking, do I really need this? And I said, well, what if I was paying it out of my pocket? What would you charge then? He goes, well, let me check. He comes back and says like $180. And I'm going, wait a second. Hold on. Let me get this straight. I have really good insurance. You're going to charge the insurance company $900, but if I reached into my pocket and paid you for it, it'd be $180? What sense does that make? And now in my mind, I'm going, I should just buy it, pay the $180, send the check in for the bill in for reimbursement, and get my money back. And I'm going, well, then all of this stuff goes, would this work? And I'm just going, it's incredible to me. So then I go back and I tell my wife about this. She says, well, they have this thing, it'll come, they'll probably not pay the $900. And it's true. They negotiate with these providers and they get, much better. Probably, who knows? They'll probably pay even less than $180 for it. But the fact that these healthcare companies are charging this kind of outrageous, just insane number is incredible to me. And it got me thinking today about, just how screwed up our healthcare system really is. And how anybody who's used it, is left scratching their head on how complicated the billing is, how complicated it all. And it's meant to be complicated. We do this stuff on purpose so people stop asking questions. The reason I bring this up is there was a Gallup poll today. Found that a majority of people in this country, 57%, believed that the federal government should make sure that every American had access to affordable, high-quality health care. And you go, my first thought was, well, only 57% believes that their neighbor, not just themselves, but their neighbor should have health care, that their children, that their grandchildren, that that they themselves should have. It's incredible to me. But the other part of this, and I guess, look, it's not surprising that a majority of people think that everyone should have health care and government should have a hand in it. The part that I found interesting, 53% We want private insurance. We don't want that government run stuff. And I'm going, this is the part that's amazing to me. Now, you can thank Obamacare for capping the amount of profit that these big insurance companies can put in their pocket. Now, understand, they found other ways to funnel money into other things that doesn't go into healthcare. But what we've seen is a mass monopolization. In my area, there are like two companies that own all the hospitals, and they're buying everything up, and they're making it. Look, I used to have a small office doctor, knew the doctor's name, he knew the kids' names. I mean, now he retired, sold out to one of these big hospital chains, and you're just a number. You're just a faceless number in the production wheel. And this is what's happened as we've allowed these big companies, for efficiency's sake, so we can use the healthcare dollar better. And yet, understand, we spend more on healthcare than any industrialized nation in the world, and we get worse outcomes, we get less care, all of the negatives. And for me, it's this monopolization that's been part of this allowing a system to spring up that is so complicated and convoluted that nobody can figure it out. The part that, again, comes back to me that's interesting is a majority of people want this system. They do. Because if you're saying we want private health insurance, this is what you are saying you want. You want a convoluted system. You want a difficult system. You want one. And I would argue probably the 53% who want that private insurance have probably never used it, have never been in the healthcare system and had to fight with these private companies to pay bills, to get things credited, to get the right billing. It's crazy, but it's our system. And there's still a majority of people in this country that have been trained like Pavlovian dogs when we start talking about a single health insurance program like Medicare for all. They lose their ever-loving flippin' minds. Yet you ask Granny loves Medicare. Republicans have done everything they can do to destroy Medicare and are trying as we speak by using the debt ceiling to go after Social Security and Medicare. But Medicare is what keeps seniors alive. And they tried to privatize a portion of it, which, interestingly enough, this is one of those weird moments where you go, the privatized portion of Medicare costs more than the public Medicare by a lot, and has much fewer people in it. So we're covering fewer people for more money, but it's privatized, so it must be better. And that's what we've been sold. Me, I believe in one giant insurance pool. There should be one insurance pool. One. And look, I'm not even 100% against the idea of it being administered by a private company and overseen by the federal government, by we the people. So that maybe we don't have these convoluted structures. Maybe we don't have this complicated billing stuff. You need a brace, you get a brace. You need to see a doctor, you get to see a doctor. You need heart surgery, you get that. You get what you need. Here's where the fun comes in. And the question just popped up. Who then determines what you need? Is it a private corporation who's got a profit motive at heart? Is it government bureaucrats who are going, hey, we can take that healthcare money and spend it elsewhere? Or is it your doctor who goes, you need this brace? This brace is going to give you the best shot to heal up. I'd prefer it be my doctor. The insurance company is just paying the bill. And this is one of these moments where it's not just the healthcare, the monopolization of this country, the kind of power that we've given to corporate America. Right now the Justice Department is I guess, and a number of states are suing Google, claiming that they have abused their monopoly power on online advertising. And they have. Anyone who's ever Googled something then knows for the next 6 months, that's all you see on your ads. Yesterday, I looked up how much a guitar case would be for the guitar I gave my daughter. And now all I see are ads for guitar cases. I mean, it's really quite remarkable that they can do this. And it's angering that they do. But the sad reality is we're at a moment where there's going to be no solving these problems. There's not. There's nobody in Congress who's going to solve this. There's no one who's going to pick these issues up and move it forward. And I can see why people wouldn't want a publicly controlled health insurance system. Because we've got Republicans who are hell-bent on destroying anything that we, the people, have. It's why we can't have nice things. It's the reason we can't have nice things, because we've got Republicans who have a hammer and want to destroy it. Like a 2-year-old in a china shop, they can't see the pretty glass without breaking it. And that means healthcare, that means education, that means infrastructure, that means... I look at Marsha Blackburn, senator from Tennessee, who today tweeted out that Americans are going to Mexico to buy eggs because they're cheaper. Only in Biden's America. And I read this and I'm going, wait a second. Americans are going to India, to Thailand, to Mexico for health care. How come I'm not hearing you complain about that? Because then you'd have to identify that our healthcare system's broken. Now, on the egg front, I don't know that they're going there or not. When I'm near New Jersey, I go to New Jersey for gas. Is that Biden's fault? And it got me thinking, who sets the prices for eggs? Is that the government? Is there a department of egg that I don't know about? Who sets the prices? Who sets production levels? Oh, don't mind the fact that we have a massive avian bird flu epidemic going through our production facilities. Don't address that. But it's Biden's America. Egg prices are high. And my thought is, is she advocating for, I don't know, a department of egg? Is she advocating for setting prices on said egg? Are we going to regulate the chicken? I mean, I know. It would be socialism. That's socialism, Rick. I don't think she knows that. I think she just saw an opportunity to go, we're going to make Joe Biden look bad. Only in Biden's America. If you remember during Trump's America, there were no eggs on the shelf. Just kind of throwing that out there. Want to hear your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK. 1-866-416-7425. You got any healthcare stories? Any of those moments where you go, what? You're going to charge me how much? And how much are you charging the insurance company? Isn't this fraud? There's something fraudulent about this? I want to hear it. Quick break, right back. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. You know, generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, classified documents found at Vice President Mike Pence's house. Yeah, evidently Pence has got classified documents too. Claims he didn't know how they got there. You know, they were, I guess, maybe parked next to his car in the garage. Who knew? Again, makes me think, who's keeping track of this stuff? Now, I find it interesting. Jesse Waters, the Fox, the F channel mouthpiece that replaced Falafel and Loofah Sponge guy, he comes out and says, Pence, seriously? We have this great thing going with Joe. Come on, man. And then he confessed to it. He couldn't just destroyed it. We'd have never known. Let that sink in for a second. You got the voice of the F channel who has been crucifying Biden for not knowing that he had classified documents and turned them over, saying, why didn't you just destroy it? Why didn't you just tear it up? Why didn't you just rip it, shred it? Do the Ollie, call up Ollie North. He could have shredded it for you. I mean, let that sink in for a second. Let it sink in for a second. What they're saying. It's all about the politics. It's not about doing the right thing. And look, I've said from the beginning, Biden needs to be held accountable for having this material. But there's a huge difference between Mike Pence and Joe Biden on one side and Donald Trump on the other. Both of them. And look, I bet you Dan Quayle right now is rummaging through his storage units to see if he's got any of those old documents. Yeah, he's got a bunch of Mr. Potato Heads, I'm sure. The difference is that Trump tried to lie, tried to do all kinds of justification and gymnastics to say, no, they're mine. I get to keep them. They're pretty folders. Oh, they're souvenirs. They're keepsakes. Oh, they were just going to throw them away anyway. Yeah, the classified documents. The National Archives fought with him over a year to get them back. There's a huge difference. And it comes back to, it's never really the crime that gets you into trouble. It's the cover-up. It's the lying about it. Ask any of those people who've had affairs. Ask Bill Clinton. Had the first person who shoved the microphone in his face said, hey, did you have Congress with Monica Lewinsky? You go, yeah, I'm sorry if I made a mistake. He would have taken some blowback. He wouldn't have gotten impeached for it. He tried to do some mental gymnastics. What is. There's the difference. Now, here's the thing. In the coming days, there are potentially going to be charges against Trump as the Georgia prosecutors, the district attorney there, this Fannie Willis, wraps up their special grand jury. There's a report been written. It evidently has recommended charges. They are now deciding with prosecutors what charges those will be and against whom they shall be. I'm hoping a large dragnet of right-wing conspirators. Maybe bring in DeSantis from Florida, maybe bring in Brian Kemp, Rudy. I mean, Rudy's going to be at the heart of this. Going to be interesting. Going to be interesting to see just how bad this report comes out for Trump. Because he's going to be indicted on something. And everyone has said, Georgia is his blind spot. That phone call, the perfect phone call of, hey, just go find me those votes that I need. Just go find them wherever you need to find them. Check the couch cushions, call up George W. Bush and have him run around the Oval Office like he did with looking for weapons of mass destruction, but find them. And little did he know, Georgia is not Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania, both ends of the call have to know they're being recorded. Georgia is not a two-party state. And there are recordings. And perfect recordings, perfectly clear audio, hearing Trump say what he said. What's known as Exhibit A, Your Honor. But here again, I have, at this point, my concern with Trump is almost gone. Do I think he needs to be held accountable for his crimes? Yeah. And do I think there are crimes? Yeah. And it's always the attempt to cover up. It's always the attempt. It's the aftermath. Now you've got some Republicans who are saying, we need to be reasonable. And I look at this Patrick Henry this Republican Patrick Henry, who's the Financial Services Committee chairman. Patrick thinks it's a good idea for Republicans not to do what they're going to do. Because I think we all know where they want to go. I think we all know that Marjorie Trainwreck Green and Jim Jordan's committees are going to be, well, how did I see it put? dumpster fires, because again, it's what they want to do. They want to use these committees as attack arms, as political attack arms to go after Biden and Hunter Biden. And this representative from North Carolina is saying, well, hold on. We got to be reasonable, realistic about the demands that we're pushing forward. Because look what they want. They want to create a 30% tax on everything you buy, just so they can abolish the IRS. And then they want to destroy Social Security and Medicare because, hey, we're going to save it. We're going to save it. So they're going to kill what little health safety net we have in this country. And they're going to tax the working class like nobody's business. Let that sink in, working people. I mean, this is the part that I'm struggling with. Why someone who punches a clock and collects a paycheck at the end of the week would vote for a Republican is beyond me. Oh, I know why. I know. It's because those other one, that other side, they believe in theories about race that are critical, and then they're the drag queen show people. And to be honest, I don't care about either one of those issues, even a little bit. You know what I care about? Making sure that everyone has food on their table, has a roof over their head, has opportunity to do better. Their children have opportunities. You get the health care, the education, the opportunities that you need. That's what we should be fighting for. Why is it we don't have working people in the streets over poverty is beyond me. Yet, last weekend you had people out in the March for Life. We're gonna crowd the streets and force people to have children that they can't afford, that we're unwilling to pay for, because we're not gonna pay taxes. Stop with the world. Something about the world they're moving us towards, and it's people who are immovable. The story came out today that a number of the incoming freshman Republicans have turned down the invitation to go to the White House for a reception for freshman legislators. And you go, this has been tradition for years. And look, even if I hate you, I mean, with all of my heart and soul and my being, I'm still going to reach a hand out and try and find, especially if it's my job, to find common ground. I used to sit down with management as a union rep, and couldn't stand the person across the table. But you're there for a reason. It's not your personal beliefs. It's the beliefs and the needs of your constituents, and we've forgotten that. So, are we going to be able to solve big problems like, I don't know, this idiocy on the debt ceiling? Are we going to be able to solve big problems like getting people health care? Not with these people. So the plea, working people, get to the right issues. And I know, Thomas Franks, what's the matter with Kansas? They're voting on their interest, and their interests are the gay marriage and all the other devices, the abortion, all that other stuff. But we need to wake up. And maybe this is another one of those moments where the old labor saying is, when people's stomachs are empty, their heads get right. Maybe we need that. I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you miss any portion of our program, make sure you download the podcast. Wherever you find your favorite podcasts, you'll find ours. Quick break, right back. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1874. That was the day Arturo Alfonso Schomburg was born. Schomburg was an important figure in the Harlem Renaissance. He is also considered a premier historian and collector of material on Black life in America. Born and raised in Puerto Rico, he arrived in the United States in 1891 and soon settled into the Cuban and Puerto Rican working class neighborhoods of New York City. Schomburg initially involved himself in the Cuban and Puerto Rican independence movements. When he traveled to New Orleans, he experienced Jim Crow discrimination and witnessed black disenfranchisement firsthand. He reacted strongly to the increased racial tensions, lynchings, and race riots of the period, and believed that history must restore what slavery took away. In 1911, Schomburg and his friend John Edward Bruce founded the Negro Society for Historical Research and established lasting friendships with intellectuals like W.E.B. Du Bois. He worked for the inclusion of black history into the educational system and continued to amass a wide collection of literature, art, books, pamphlets, and manuscripts on black life and history. His collection spanned materials from across the globe. It included letters of Haitian revolutionary Toussaint Louverture, poetry by Phyllis Wheatley, artifacts from Frederick Douglass, and other black leaders. Schomburg's private collection became the basis for the 135th Street branch of the New York Public Library's Division of Negro Literature, History, and Prints, which opened in 1925. The division served as a pivotal resource for Harlem Renaissance writers, poets, and artists. Known today as the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture, it is recognized as the leading repository for materials and artifacts on black cultural life. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
High-dollar corporate executives and Wall Street bankers keep telling us that it's lonely at the top. Well, they should try toiling at the bottom of America's pay scale. The radical rise of inequality in our society is a function of the vast political inequality separating the working class from the power structure. The elite rich have many friends in high places, paying close attention to their needs, but the further one tumbles down the economic ladder, the lonelier you are when your interests conflict with the bosses and big shots. As Ray Charles sang, "Them that's got is them it gets." Consider waiters, bartenders, and other restaurant workers. Generally, these jobs are poorly paid and routinely abusive, yet lawmakers mostly ignore all that, cozying up to the abusers because, well, they're rich and politically connected. As a result, most of today's restaurant workers are paid a sub-minimum wage that was set 32 years ago at $2.13 an hour. That's not a wage, it's an insult. Yet most lawmakers refuse to raise it, bowing to the piles of campaign cash they get through a lobbying front called the National Restaurant Association, dominated by multi-billion-dollar food chains. Worse, in the past decade, this consortium of greedy wage suppressors even devised a diabolical scheme to make restaurant workers pay for the industry's lobbying campaigns to hold down wages. The association bought an outfit that provides hokey food safety training to workers. Then it lobbied to get California, Florida, Illinois, Texas, and other states to require that all employees not only undergo the silly online training course, but also making them pay $15 each for the training. This is Jim Hightower saying, guess what? NRA then uses these worker training fees to fund its lobbying efforts that let restaurants pay poverty wages. And that, kids, is how inequality happens.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So the doomsday clock. Yeah, you've heard of the doomsday clock. When it hits midnight, it's the end of humanity. Well, we're 90 seconds away. Evidently, the clock has moved forward to 90 seconds to midnight. Uh-oh. And this is one of those moments where if humanity's under attack, this is where my conservative friends are not wrong. We need to have big, strong military. We need to be able to fight our way out. Problem, as we've been saying on this show for years, you got to build your war machine. We've evidently lost that capacity. In fact, a new report out over at the Wall Street Journal, I believe it was, says that we're unprepared. And gee, who could have predicted that? Oh yeah, my next guest did it almost a decade ago, warned us of how bad things would be and how our military is heavily reliant on China. Gee, who could have predicted it? That's why I've asked my good friend Scott Paul to come talk with us. Scott is the president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing, AmericanManufacturing.org, their website. Scott, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, Rick, it's great to be with you, even with the doomsday clock where it is.
So you got the crystal ball there going. What are the lottery numbers? You got this one. What are the lottery numbers?
Yeah, although I hate being right about this. I mean, that's the challenge is that when I would say 2011, 2012, we started getting reports that Uh, there were challenges in supply chains for materials and manufactured goods that have national security use or utilization. Everything literally from like munitions, okay, to high tech microelectronics, to things like specialty metals. And it was across the board. It was across the board. And these were some scary deficits. And we went platform by platform. And by we, I'm using the royal we. We actually had a retired brigadier general and his team do this, who knows about this and who has had to do this procurement before, to go platform by platform into fighter jets and Abrams tanks and armored personnel carriers and submarines and what have you, and where there were only sole supplier, or there was a limited amount in the United States, and that we would have a real problem if either there was a shutdown, that plant closed, or we ran into a situation where we needed to scale up dramatically. And here we are today.
Yeah.
And here we are with the Center for Strategic and International Studies did this report, and they reached all sorts of conclusions. I don't agree with them all about how we got here, and part of it has to do with Pentagon procurement. But the fact remains that we would have a very difficult time right now scaling up if all of a sudden the Chinese military tried to invade Taiwan, or if Putin escalated. And even with the arms that we've provided to Ukraine, and I'm glad that we have, I think it's very important that we do, we're trying to pick up the pace so that we have the resupply available for our own military, for our allies, and for Ukraine when it needs this material. And it is a real challenge. And I hate to raise this because I don't want to sound like a warmonger. I'm not, and I don't think the people who did the study are either. I don't think you are. But the fact is, if you're unprepared, our competitors, our enemies are going to know that, and they're going to totally take advantage of that situation. So we need to get our act together.
No, I'm of the Teddy Roosevelt mindset. You walk softly, but you carry a big stick. I'm not a warmonger by any stretch of the imagination, but there are people out there who want to do us harm, and being prepared for this. And this is something we have talked about this literally for over a decade. Your report came out a decade ago, and I can't imagine how much worse it is now from how bad it was back then. I'm sure it's gotten progressively worse. And I think most people are in the vein that I'm in. Nobody wants war. Nobody wants conflict. But I'm still, I agree with the Powell doctrine even. Overwhelming force, you need to have a big stick.
Yeah.
I don't think we should be using it all over the place. Let's be perfectly clear about that. But you got to be able to defend yourself. And the fact that we don't have the manufacturing capacity, as you've pointed out a couple of times, to ramp up as we did during World War II, that should frighten everyone.
Yeah, and I guess the challenge that I struggle with is that in a lot of ways it's not like our defense budget hasn't increased, because it has, right? I mean, it definitely has. And it's a real head scratcher to me, like where this money's going to, because it's not like our enlisted men are making a lot of money, and their families, they're not particularly well paid, and we do have all of these shortcomings in the supply chains. So it sounds to me like a lot of these big defense contractors are living large, but they're also doing this on the cheap in a way where their supply chain is a bit ragged and very vulnerable. And so it's definitely time that we both reform this and then lean into these supply chain issues. And again, this is not a mystery. We have known exactly where they are for more than a decade. And this latest report also sheds light on it. The administration has done its own studies on supply chains, 1,300 pages about what the challenges are. And I know that the Defense Industrial Base unit within the Pentagon is well aware of this too. It's just marshaling the forces into action. And here's what gives me hope. I mean, we have done this to some extent with semiconductors. Okay,
Right.
the alarm bell was sounded, and we've done a little bit of this, so it is possible, and it shows that if you have a policy and you have a little bit of investment, what you can do. But we got to get on it, like right now. Should be a big issue.
No, no, on the chips front. I mean, it's always amazing to me the smart chips to make our smart bombs smart. We're reliant on foreign countries to get the smart bombs, to get these chips. And you go, if you ever get into a war scenario where we need them, I don't think I would want to be the one making that phone call. Hello, China, would you mind sending us some of those chips to make our smart bombs smart so we can drop them on you? I don't know how that phone. Actually, I do know how that phone call goes. Click.
Right. Well, look, think about it this way. Even our Taiwan, our ally, where a lot of this production is based, if China's invading them, we're not going to get chips from Taiwan. I mean, it's just not going to happen. And so it's out of necessity that we are scaling up our semiconductors. But that's the tip of the iceberg. I mean, we have other microelectronics, we have other specialty metals, we have munitions, we have like even the platforms like the Abrams tanks and what have you. We're gonna need to ramp that up, and it's painful for me to say this in a lot of ways with all the priorities that we have that we need to do as a country, but this has to be one of them.
Yeah. And the thing that gets me, Scott, is our defense budget is $778 billion.
Yeah.
We spend more than, what is it? What's the little talking point? More than the next 20 countries combined.
Yeah.
And yet this is how we're choosing to operate this. Now, as people like to remind me, well, don't we have a Berry Amendment that says that we need to make all this stuff here? Isn't the law that you have to make your war machine here? How do they get around? How do they get around that? Because I was under the impression years ago, until I met you and that report, that everything for our military was made here at home, because that would make sense. But somehow they weasel their way around it.
Yeah, though there's a lot of loopholes. So there's waivers available, and as you get to the third or fourth tier of the supply chain, there's not a lot of visibility into that. In fact, there were discoveries made of Chinese parts in sophisticated equipment after some forensic audits were done, because the contractors didn't even know where the stuff came from. And then we do have agreements with some of our allies too, that we can jointly produce or share production of that. And I'm comfortable with some of that, but I do think that it's been way overextended. Okay, and the fact that we have, for instance, one supplier of armor plate and other types of metal that can go into aircraft carriers and submarines, and it's pretty close to your home base, right? It's in Coatesville, Pennsylvania, and that's the one place in the United States of America where this is made. And we got to, and that mill struggles to survive from time to time because of the commercial market too, and all the imports that are coming in and all the struggles. And so we definitely need to do a better job of this. We have to get at it. And believe me when I say that we're going to be focusing on this in a renewed sense this year. And Rick, I know you love and cherish this big report that we did 10 years ago, because I've seen it on your show. And it's not like this was a secret to lawmakers. I mean, we took it to every office in Capitol Hill. We took it to the Obama administration. I know the president of the Steelworkers did, handed it personally to the president. I know that Rich Trumka, rest in peace, handed it to Donald Trump when he was president. And I know the Biden folks are aware of it too. So it's not like this is a secret.
No, it filtered down to me, so everybody should have it.
And it's available on our website. So if you go to AmericanManufacturing.org and you look up Remaking American Security, you can get a copy for yourself. So it's and it is really eye-opening.
No, I highly suggest it. In fact, we'll find it and we'll get links out on social media how folks can take a look at this. Now, I guess the question that I have that is kind of important, because I just had this conversation with my kids the other day about, we were talking about World War II and how the country, moved from, consumer production to a war footing very quickly. We were able to turn manufacturing, into airplanes and tank production. What used to make automobiles made planes and tanks.
Yeah.
Do we have the kind of production facilities left? I mean, we've hollowed out our manufacturing base all across every industry just about. We've lost millions of jobs, and all of those factories. We just did a tour not too long ago, the Working Class Heroes radio tour, that took us into places that used to produce stuff. Those facilities are crumbling, already torn down. The steel mill out in Bethlehem's a casino. We've completely changed. Can we, in the event of something horrible happening, do you think we have the capacity to turn on a dime and ramp up production?
I am an optimist, and I do think that when we rally to a national cause, that and we put our best minds and our resources to it, that we can be successful. But I will say that we are not starting from a position of great strength here. As you mentioned, heading into World War II, and this is very important because the amount of tonnage that we were able to deliver rapidly changed the course of the war. It really did, and every historian agrees with that it was the U.S. manufacturing power that completely overwhelmed the enemy. We could do it faster, better than anybody else on a remarkable scale. And so, it's a lot harder to convert a McDonald's or a Walmart into a factory than it is something that's already making something. And so that's the challenge, is that we don't have those industrial assets that we used to. But again, I mean, there's a unit in the Defense Department that is supposed to be considering all of this, that theoretically has a scale-up plan, but it has to be sustained, because we just had a national emergency within the last couple of years with respect to the pandemic, and we had to try to scale up PPE and pharmaceuticals. And the pharmaceuticals was a great success stories, and one of the few, the Operation Warp Speed, one of the few things that really worked in the Trump administration, because we threw a massive federal investment in it. We threw everything at it, everything all at once at it, and it was quite successful. The mask was a harder go because all of the suppliers were so dependent on China, and they didn't want to change their ways. And so even when you had companies saying, I want to produce surgical quality masks or N95 masks, the hospitals, the government, they were reluctant to change their suppliers from the Chinese-based ones. And it made it very difficult for these companies to stay in business, but they did. And you know what? Everybody else started making masks too. I mean, anybody who could make a mask was making a mask in their shop. And so that's the part that I guess gives me hope, that we can rally and we can get this done. But this should serve as a wake-up call. Yeah. And I don't mean this in any warmongering sense at all, but you have to be prepared. You really do.
And look, we're spending, like I said, more than the next 20, 25 countries combined. At least we should be able to get it made here in the U.S. Now, before I let you go, this other story, completely same topic, completely different level of seriousness. I'm looking at this story about Pyrex, which I had always thought was an American company, made all their products in the U.S. In fact, my wife's nodding her head, very thrilled that we bought American-made Pyrex dishes and measuring cups. I'm now finding out because of this article, maybe not.
Yeah, it's, I mean, talk about getting people upset. And there was someone on our staff who bought Pyrex during the pandemic and got burned by this too. But yeah, they're an iconic American brand. Anybody who bakes or cooks knows what the Pyrex measuring cups are. But during the pandemic, when everybody was baking and cooking, the good news for Pyrex is they got a lot of demand in. The bad news, they didn't expand their production enough in the United States. And to fulfill Amazon orders, they had it imported from China, and it was still marketed on Amazon as made in America. Pyrex. So for people who were expecting Made in America Pyrex, and there were at least 110,000 units sold, they got made in China. And so I guess the good news is that the law caught up with Pyrex. They're getting fined. I don't think the Federal Trade Commission has enough authority yet to do more fines than this. I mean, I think they can do better. It's like $125,000, but there's little recourse for consumers other than Pyrex is changing their marketing about this, and so it's deeply upsetting. But it just talks about how difficult online shopping is, and to know what you're getting is actually American made, and how infuriating that can be. But it tells me, and so we're working with Tammy Baldwin, senator from Wisconsin, and some Republicans for online labeling to strengthen the Made in America labeling requirement, and also to make sure the Federal Trade Commission is boosting its enforcement to protect consumers in the same way that they are with antitrust and everything else. They got to ramp it up on Made in America.
No, I'm seeing the FTC doing. Hopefully going to be doing a lot of things in the next year or two. On antitrust, on breaking up some of these huge monopolies, on holding people accountable, whether it's Pyrex for claiming their products are made in the U.S. or organic farmers who are cheating their customers by giving them crap and calling it organic. The hope is that we hold people accountable. But Scott, as always, great stuff. I appreciate the time. Look forward to having you back again soon.
Can't wait, Rick. Thanks so much. Keep up the great work.
Good stuff. Our good friend Scott Paul. Make sure you check out their website, AmericanManufacturing.org. Scott's the president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. Listen to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people from the top. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1984. That was the day the Nestle Corporation agreed to terms in order to end a 7-year international boycott against the company. The boycott was over the unsafe and dangerous ways that Nestle marketed and sold its baby formula in third world countries. The boycott began in the United States in Minneapolis, Minnesota. It spread abroad to Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, eventually reaching 10 countries. The campaign was largely grassroots in nature, with local activists organizing different actions. In Massachusetts, boycotters ceremoniously dumped Nestle products in a Boston Nestea party. Finally, after 7 years, the grassroots organizing met its goal. Nestle agreed to follow international standards for baby formula marketing. Boycotts are an important way for consumers and workers to protest corporate practices and social injustice. There have been several very influential boycotts in our nation's history. In the 1950s, the Montgomery bus boycott challenged racial discrimination in one southern city and helped to launch the civil rights movement and empower a generation to fight for equality. In the 1960s, Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta of the United Farm Workers called for a boycott of grape and lettuce growers in California. That boycott helped to bring national attention to the fight to improve pay and working conditions for Latino farm workers in California. In the 1980s, a campaign against goods made in South Africa was a stand against that country's apartheid system. In 1984, the members of the International Longshore and Warehouse Union Local 10 refused to unload a South African ship in the port of Oakland. Their action stood as a powerful statement of international worker solidarity for racial justice. Boycotts have long helped to change the course of history as citizens stand together in solidarity.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
Here's the reality. I have been talking about the need for an industrial policy for decades. The reality is our friends over at the Alliance for American Manufacturing came out with this book on how dependent our military is on foreign chips, foreign magnets, foreign screws, you name it. how dependent we are on our war machine, how dependent we are on other nations. And you go, how does that make any sense? And it's it really is the natural progression from deindustrialization as a whole. Now, what I find really ironic is, the people who boast about being, the most pro-military, the most, pro-defense, wave the flag the highest and, salute and scream the national anthem the loudest, are the people who have really screwed this country over the worst. And while we're being patriotic and standing for the national anthem and all of that, well, they're kneeling at the altar of capitalism. They're kneeling for corporate profits. So as we were outsourcing in just obscene levels, letting our steel industry go, letting our aluminum industry go, letting our manufacturing base go, as we were allowing that to happen, our good neoliberal supply-side voodoo Reaganomic politicians, they were lining their pockets. They're lining their coffers. So you go, how did we get here? Rick, how did we get to a position where we're dependent on China for anything in our military? You go, bad policy. People who were, taking campaign contributions from lobbyists who are saying, we could make it a lot more profitable if we just, did this little piece somewhere else. And we'll bring that little piece in, assemble it here, and we'll call it Made in America. And I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's nuts and bolts, screws. I don't care if it's duct tape. It should be made here. If it's part of that military war machine, you need to have domestic production. And the reality is, I'm not a warmonger. I'm actually quite, I've been called a pacifist, but I'm not a pacifist. I don't believe in starting fights. If one breaks out, you got to finish it. I don't back down, but I don't start them. And I agree with Colin Powell. I agree with the Powell doctrine. Someone hits you with a feather, you hit them with a brick. Ends things quickly. But we're in a moment, and this is a good thing. We're in a moment where that report that I talked about came out over a decade ago. We're finally starting to see people wake up to the reality that, maybe they've gone too far. Bill Clinton himself said, maybe they went too far with their bad trade deals. The question is, given how dysfunctional our folk in Congress are, we have a Republican Party who wants to destroy things. Can we address this problem? Is this something that can be addressed? Because understand, you look at the CHIPS bill, that's going to have massive investment in bringing semiconductor production back and bringing other manufacturing back to this country, of which our billionaire friends are not happy. If you saw some of the responses coming out of Davos about the fact that we're reshoring manufacturing and investing heavily and bringing jobs back and all that here, not happy. And who was at the front of the line? Yeah, Joe Manchin, along with Kirsten Sinema. And I would argue the entire Republican establishment. Question is how much more of this are we going to put up with? Again, those jobs coming back, and again, like I said, I'm not a warmonger, but those jobs coming back, those are family-sustaining jobs. Those were good union jobs. And these CEOs, these corporate CEOs saw an opportunity to fleece the federal government and line their pockets at the expense of our national security. So where is the next Harry Truman? Where is the next Harry Truman going to have a commission to go after these war profiteers? Where'd the money go? Evidently it didn't go to wages for workers here. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Questions, comments, something on your mind? I want to hear it. You miss any portion of the program? Make sure you grab the podcast. Wherever you find your favorite podcast, you'll find ours.
"21 lives have been lost. We had 9 atmospheric rivers going back 22 days.
Damages from California's storms to top $1 billion.
There are, no known connections between any of this offshore wind activity and any whale stranding, regardless of species.
Nope, offshore wind did not kill whales in the U.S. Northeast. Plus, hand-feeding manatees in Florida appears to be saving the species.
All of those surprising stories and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news.
Oh, you're obsessed with gas stoves? No, you're obsessed with gas stoves, buddy.
Okay, Fox News' top paid personality. You okay, Tucker? You all right there, buddy? This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, aside from the whatever insanity is going on over at Fox News these days, out here in California, the governor just announced over 1,400 rescues in this chain of storms over the past 3 or 4 weeks.
Yes, it's quite remarkable. In California, that series of punishing atmospheric river storms over the last few weeks has ultimately helped to reduce the historic 22-year drought plaguing the U.S. West. But the cost of drought relief is steep. Preliminary estimates of damages to buildings and infrastructure alone caused by the floods and landslides are expected to reach at least $1 billion.
At least.
40 of the state's 58 counties sustained damage. In a tour of devastated areas late last week, President Biden noted the rising costs of extreme weather disasters and pledged the full support of the federal government.
The people in California, I say it again, the country is here for you and with you. We are not leaving till things are built back and built back better than they were before. You can recover from storms. We'll be with you every step of the way.
Is he allowed by law to say build back better anymore?
Apparently it's still okay.
Oh, okay.
Biden also said FEMA will help those who are uninsured and underinsured, which is good because AP reports that only about 2% of homeowners in California have flood insurance, which is separate from homeowners insurance. And that is the case in most states, in part because people don't know they need flood insurance because federal flood maps do not accurately predict all kinds of flood risks and haven't been updated to account for increased risks from man-made climate change. Experts warn that California and other states should invest more in flood defenses to prepare for even bigger flood events in the future.
Or at least invest in new maps?
Overall, in the U.S., in 2022, extreme weather disasters displaced 3.3 million Americans.
Wow.
That's according to data from the U.S. Census Bureau. That 3.3 million displaced includes nearly 1 million people in Florida alone.
But everything's fine, Florida. Don't worry about a thing.
The Biden U.S. Department of Agriculture is also appropriating $930 million to reduce wildfire dangers in 10 western states through a new comprehensive wildfire prevention program that includes intensive clearing of trees and underbrush from national forests. But Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack says the new program is hampered by the shortage of workers that has been plaguing other sectors of the economy. Vilsack also warned that draconian budget cuts floated by House Republicans would decimate the Forest Service's firefighting efforts. A disturbing increase of whale deaths off the East Coast since 2016 is likely due to collisions with ships and fishing gear entanglement, not activities of the offshore wind industry.
Are you sure? Because Fox News suggests otherwise.
That's according to scientists at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration.
Scientists.
Now, critics of offshore wind power have tried to link the whale deaths to the industry's prep work on proposed wind power projects, but NOAA scientists say the wind industry's sonar mapping of the sea floor is a very different technology from the oil and gas industry's high-energy omnidirectional seismic guns. Benjamin Laws, deputy chief of NOAA Fisheries, said that where a cause of death could be determined for the enormous animals, it appeared to be primarily boat strikes and fishing gear.
We do not have evidence that would support the connection between the survey work and these recent stranding events or any stranding events in the last several years. There are no known connections between any of this offshore wind activity and any whale stranding, regardless of species.
Finally, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has restarted hand-feeding manatees along Florida's eastern shore to prevent the threatened marine mammals from starving during the cold winter months. The primary food supply for manatees is seagrass, but that is dying off due to human pollution and runoff. And the program appears to be working. Hundreds fewer manatees died in 2022 than previous years.
Hand feeding them.
Yes.
That does not seem sustainable to me. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So today at major airports across the country, American Airlines flight attendants, represented by the Association of Professional Flight Attendants Union, they held an informational picket, taking their fight for a decent contract, decent wages, hours, conditions directly to the flying public. And I think these are important. Explain to the customers, the people who fund these airlines, what their conditions are, what they put up with, how many hours they're being forced to work. What I'm told, a lot of sympathy here. But I've told contract negotiations entering what is known as a critical phase, and this hopefully going to get the attention of management. You see people out on the terminals, riling people up. Might get them back to the bargaining table and help these flight attendants get better wages, hours, conditions, and, well, the respect that they deserve, equal to their professionalism, commitment, and quality. And here to share some thoughts on today's events and what they hope to come out of this, I've asked Paul Hartshorn to come talk with us. He's the National Communications Chair with the Association of Professional Flight Attendants, APFA. Paul, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you for having me. Also a flight attendant here as well.
Okay, good. So then you know firsthand what I'm about to ask you, because let's start even before the informational pickets and all this. How does anyone want to be a flight attendant coming out of the pandemic with all of the horrible that we're seeing in the flying public? I mean, your people deserve double whatever they're getting, let alone the pittance you're asking for.
Yeah, thank you. And not just American Airlines flight attendants, but flight attendants and airline workers I will include, okay? Gate agents, everybody across the industry have been abused in more ways than one over the past couple of years. Look, with any industry, I think you'll see a lot of the restaurant industry, a lot of industries suffered through the pandemic, but our flight attendants were still coming to work. We were at first told, hey, I don't think you need masks, not a big deal, but we need you to come to work. We need to get these doctors to the global hotspots. We need to get this medicine over here. Thank you so much for what you're doing and everything. And it took a tremendous, tremendous toll on our flight attendants. Not to mention the fact that the disruptive passengers trying to enforce the mask policy, everything that I probably don't need to tell you because you lived it if you picked up a newspaper or if you went online and just basically turned on any news channel. So it has been a tough road for our flight attendants. This critical phase that we're entering now, our contract became amendable in 2019. Obviously, under the Railway Labor Act, contracts don't expire. They become amendable, right, as we all know. It's been 4 long years, and we have not had a raise, had not had improvements to work rules since 2019. Productivity has increased greatly, and it's time for this management. It's time for all airline management to come to the table and give these flight attendants, give us what we deserve.
No, what you earn, not deserve, what you earn.
Thank you.
This is one of those things that it's not deserved. No, you earned this. You showed up during the pandemic. We called you frontline heroes. We called you essential. How about treatment as such?
We would love it. We would love it. It was some dark times. It was some dark times. We lost not only the people that stayed flying, but we had thousands, almost 8,000 at American Airlines alone, furloughed and laid off. People had to leave a job that they loved because they were afraid of getting sick. We offered some early retirement packages, people that did not want to leave. It really, really is kind of a sad story in the airline industry. Again, not just the flight attendants. It extended to all airline employees and other industries across the country. But it's been tough, and we're ready, for what we earned.
Yeah. So let me ask you this: today you are out in the on the streets there in cities across the country: Charlotte, Washington, Dallas, New York, Boston, L.A., the big airports. How'd the events? Philadelphia. How'd the event go?
It was awesome. We have 11 flight attendant bases stretching from Boston to Miami to San Francisco, LA, all over the country, and it was an amazing turnout. This is actually our second action item that we've done. We did a first picketing on November 15th, which was unbelievably attended by our flight attendants. We not only had American Airlines flight attendants there, we have had United Airlines flight attendants crowding our picket lines. We've had Southwest, we've had ground staff there. It has been kind of just a coming together of all airline industry employees, ground and air, to get this done. You know, if you look at all the airlines across the country, a lot of them, pilots, flight attendants, ground workers, are in negotiations, and this has got to stop being dragged out.
Now, the fact that you brought up, your flight attendants have not seen a raise since 2019. You think about all of the inflation that's happened because of the pandemic and our broken supply chains and all of that. Wages, 2019 wages, not keeping up with 2023 spending.
Not keeping up with 2023 spending. And as I probably mentioned to you during the break, look, we American Airlines is back to flying the block hours that it flew pre-pandemic. You saw how quickly last June that travel demand just came back literally overnight. It was crazy. They're doing it with 3,000 to 3,500 less flight attendants. So we're packing more trips on those flights. People are exhausted. People are tired. It's not the customer service environment that you want to enter when you pass through the aircraft door. So we got to get this done. We got to keep the hiring going. We got to improve these work rules. Our flight attendants really, we're asking for pay. We're asking for work rule improvements, but what we need is some work-life balance. Exhausted.
No, that's an important thing there, and I want people to understand what you just said. You're back to what pre-pandemic flights are, all the hours in the air, all of the flights in the air, but with 3,000 less people than you had before. So you have to have the people who are dedicated and still there covering all those additional positions, because you can't just go, hey, nobody showed up, we don't have flight attendants today. That's not how this game works. So you're underpaid, you're extremely overworked, and the treatment of the flight attendants, even in the flights that I've been, have been abysmal. This sounds like a hat trick of horrible in trying to get anybody to come there. So why isn't America going, no, we're going to throw money at the people who are staying here just to get them to stay?
It's really unbelievable. Look, and also when you're throwing all these extra flights on people's schedules, this is why you're seeing some of these meltdowns. American has had its fair share over the past couple of years during the pandemic. When you're scheduling your pilots and flight attendants to almost the maximum FAA, Federal Aviation regulations that are allowed, there's not much room for error when you pull into Dallas and there's a thunderstorm and you got to wait an hour at the gate. All of a sudden you have crews going illegal. It's not just the exhaustion of the flight attendants and what we've earned. It's also affecting the traveling public too. Yeah. So we need to kind of get this right. We need to fix it. We need to make sure we get people in there. We need to come up with contractual work rules that give these flight attendants some relief.
You listen to the Rick Smith Show. We're Pete Hartshorn. He is the National Communications Chair for the Association of Professional Flight Attendants, apfa.org, their website. We'll get links out on social media, how you can take a look at that. Today, they had an informational picket at airports across the country, representing some of their 25,000 flight attendants across the nation. You brought up, the airlines and the staffing problems and all of this. Is there nothing that Pete Buttigieg and that segment should be doing? I mean, fining these airlines. I mean, we had a major outage that shut the entire country down. We've had, flights canceled and people left, basically, flightless. And yet we're not getting the kind of regulatory enforcement that I would think these companies should have to be punished with for not doing what is right, not bringing in enough people, not paying adequate wages to bring people in. Because look, I know people who want to be flight attendants. They just don't want to work for poverty wages and be overworked and mistreated like the stories we're hearing. So it seems like maybe some enforcement from Mayor Pete. Thoughts?
Some enforcement from Mayor Pete's. I'm not smart enough to comment on the software issues and everything of these antiquated systems that a lot of the airlines are using. I don't think it's just one airline that we won't name from last month. I think it's a lot of them. So that's really not my area of expertise. What I will say though is they need to look at the productivity. They need to look at what they're making these flight attendants fly. I won't also speak about the pilots. I'll let them speak for themselves, but I know they're in the same boat, right? They keep cramming things into these trips, making these trips longer, making us be out there for 14-hour duty days on paper when you can't go much past that. for 3 days in a row. It's the recipe for disaster, not only for the exhaustion and the customer service aspect, but the issue when there's a thunderstorm in one of our hubs that has almost 1,000 flights a day, Dallas or Charlotte. I mean, come on, you can't operate like that. You need to have some give in the system.
And you need some reserves. You need people who are going to be there in case you run out of hours. Look, as a truck driver, I understand hours of service. I understand when you hit that clock, there's nothing you can do. So you need to have a couple of extra people. You can't be working on the margin. So let me ask you this: as you've done now 2 of these informational pickets, does this at some point down the road become an actual picket? Do you guys eventually, is that something on the table? And then the follow up to that, what we saw with the railroad workers, you guys are covered under the Railway Labor Act. Does the federal government step in and not allow you to strike?
Very good questions. Very, very good questions. First off, this is our second, what we call informational system-wide picket. We've had tremendous support from the public. I'll not even name all the unions that came out to support us, but the public alone has been tremendously supportive because they've been through this. Every airline has had their breakdowns the past couple of years, right? Enough is enough. So they see it, they know it, they know that we're worked to, our max duty days because that's what they are told by the agents when the flight cancels. So yeah, so that's an issue. Number 2, yes, we are governed under the Railway Labor Act, and that's another show. That's something that we could probably discuss with people, again, much smarter than I, but it is very restrictive on what unions can and can't do in this day and age. Let's face it, we have these mega carriers, and who knows who's allowed to go on strike when? We won't know until we get there. We are going to continue with our action items that we're doing now, look for more picketing, look for more action items. You can always check out our website. We'll have them on there for anyone who is interested. But yeah, coming up, the next step in our negotiations, if American doesn't come to the table in the next few weeks, like we'd like them to, we're looking at getting a federal contact to the National Mediation Board, and you'll get a federal mediator assigned to you, right? Try to help the process along. Go down that road. Again, it comes down to accepting after that an offer of binding arbitration. If any of the parties reject it, you go into a 30-day cooling off period. And I think we all know from there what happens after that. We don't want to go down that road. Our flight attendants don't deserve to go down that road. They've been through hell and back already. Let's get this done. American knows they need to get it done. Let's get it done.
No, I'm right there with you. So what can we do to help? What can folks do to kind of push management in a direction? I mean, the fact that you haven't seen a raise since 2019 and you're doing all of this extra work, it seems to me like the CEOs and the management negotiating folks would want to have a lucrative package to entice people to come in and alleviate some of these problems. But again, what makes sense doesn't make sense in corporate boardrooms. So I'm curious, how can we help?
No, look, you got the passengers, like I said, have been tremendously supportive out there, supporting us on our picket line and all 11 flight attendant bases there. We got some great footage of it. We have news out there everywhere. Everyone has been tremendously supportive to us. Our regular customers that we see entering the airport, when we're out there picketing, when we're out there leafleting, we're walking through the airports, passing out, leafleting, things of that nature. More of that's going to come up. But I will say, this isn't just about the compensation for our flight attendants. It's about the scheduling flexibility. They're like I hate to go back to it, but they're building these trips, and flight attendants are away for 1, 2, 3 more days. These flight attendants have kids, they have sick parents, they have a husband who's possibly dealing with cancer. They got a lot going on, and they're stuck out on these trips, and they're just cramming stuff in. And when you cram stuff in, they can't swap their trips around. There's no flexibility. They're stuck on it. So there's so many things that we can fix that we've cut. We're not just coming to the table saying, this is what we want, American, fix this. We're coming with ideas. We're coming with constructive ideas to help the flight attendants and obviously not stick the company, not screw them. But we need them to get this done. They know exactly what they need to do. We need to wrap it up and go forward. But I will say once again, we are tremendously appreciative of all the unions. I want to name them all. I have a list of them today, and I don't want to name them because I'll probably miss some. But they were out there for us today. Passengers were out there for us today. Cookies, you name it. It was great, and we're really appreciative of it.
Oh, good stuff, Paul. I hope you'll come back and keep us up to date on what's going on here. We want what's best for our flight attendants. We want them to get what they've earned and reward their professionalism and the quality of their work. And it's that simple. But I appreciate your time.
Appreciate your time. Hope to see you on a flight soon.
Good stuff. Paul Hartshorn, National Communications Chair at the Association of Professional Flight Attendants, APFA.org, the website. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com, or give us a call, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Back after this. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. You know, generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
It's one of the things that gets me. You know, the reality is, you know, we hear a lot of people say, well, we deserve something. No, these workers, they earn it. They deserve it, yeah, but they earn it. These are people who we called heroes, remember? They're frontline heroes. These are folks that we said were essential. And they showed up. And the fact that, you know, as Paul points out, the fact that they're back to pre-pandemic levels of flights, the number of hours in the sky, these planes are actually up, and the number of people who are servicing the flying public, you know, well down. That means they're working, you know, many more shifts. They're, as he pointed out, away from home more often. Lots of not good. If you're a worker there, do you stay? If you're working harder than you did 4 years ago, making the same money you made 4 years ago, but working extra hours, working extra flights, doing all of the things that you have to put up with now, the flying public? Seriously? Couldn't get me there. Couldn't get me there at all. And this is why, again, I keep coming back to, you know, the reality is this is why people sit down and bargain. This is why workers need to come together and say, look, we're going to demand better wages, hours, conditions. We're not asking, we're not begging, we're not putting our hand out. We're going to demand we get here. We're going to demand that we're treated with respect and dignity. We're going to demand it. Maybe it's where we need to be. Simple as far as I'm concerned. Let's go to the phone lines. Got Jerry on line 1. Jerry, how are we doing today?
Hi there, Rick.
What's on your mind?
I'm in Arizona, and I love your radio station and your pro-union stance.
Thank you.
2 things. One is my ex-husband's father was president of the state electrical board in a state I won't mention, but it was back in the 70s before I divorced him in 73, and I remember them saying, one of them darkies came in today, and we sure didn't have an opening for an apprenticeship, which is racism. But anyway, why don't you do more research on whenever they pass statutes, more research on the Republican arguments of how they would dare allow companies to have tax deductions to send jobs overseas. See, every time a statute is passed, they record the arguments made on both sides, so you can blame the Republicans and who started that. Because I'll never forget driving down the road in my van, because I was a house painter, hearing that the Congress allowed tax deductions for these companies to dare send jobs overseas, and even the workers, and make it tax deductible.
No. If you remember,
criminal.
if you remember
should
2012,
research more the wording in the statute books of who argued pro sending jobs overseas.
Well, we know who did that. A lot of Republicans and some corporate Democrats.
Right, but read the wording of who the congressperson was that argued it.
Yep.
I mean, it should have been criminal, but it was allowed. It was put on the books, and it was approved by Congress. But the wording of who started it and who, I mean, that was the most shocking thing in the world to me, was when I heard it's tax deductible. We can send our, and Mitt Romney and his companies and all that. But it's in the book somewhere. It needs to be researched, in my opinion.
We'll take a look for
Thanks, Rick. Keep up the good work. You're the best. Go unions.
Thank you, Jerry. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. No, look, she's not wrong. I mean, we should look up and find out who brought this, but we know what policymakers brought us this. There were a number of corporate Democrats and the Republican establishment. This is neoliberal supply side voodoo Reaganomics on steroids, and that whole thing of tax breaks. If you remember 2012, Mitt Romney said, remember when he said, well, I don't know what you're talking about. I have never, and yet it's right there in black and white that the companies that he shipped overseas through Bain Capital took massive cuts, got massive deductions. We paid for our manufacturing base to be moved overseas. And now, sadly, and this is where my frustration is, we're paying for it to come back. So this is a, heads they win, tails we lose kind of scenario. It's angering. It's frustrating. But again, I think she's right. We do need to go back and say, this is how it came about. Because most of us have taken it for granted that this is just how it's been. And it's not. This was a conscious choice by elected leaders. This was a conscious choice that was lobbied for by corporate America to do what? Enrich them at your expense, at my expense. You go back to what we talked about with Scott Paul earlier. The fact that our manufacturing base has been so hollowed out. Our military is less secure, our nation less secure because of it. Where did that money go? Who's going to be this generation's Harry Truman? Who's going to be this generation's Teddy Roosevelt? Who's going to break up these big monopolies? Who's going to hold these people accountable? Again, take off the red hats, take off the blue hats, put on a hard hat, and let's rebuild this country together. Let's hold these people accountable because they knew what they were doing. Understand, our tax code works exactly as it's supposed to. Our trade policies work exactly as they were intended. All of these things that we complain about, all of these things that have destroyed a prosperous working class, all these things that harm families, all these things that are literally killing us are working perfectly as designed. They're enriching the handfuls at the very top, heaping wild amounts of wealth and power on them at the expense of, you and me. And yet we still fight over the nonsense. We still fight over, I keep going back to, gay marriage, abortion, all of the divisive stuff that doesn't affect the average individual. You against gay marriage? Don't do it. You against abortion? Don't do it. You don't want to go to a drag show? Don't. It's that simple. But when you're talking about an economy that should be working for everyone, when you talk about national security and a military base that's being built here, when you talk about the things that make us really strong, they don't want to have anything to do with it because they know which side of the bread their butter's on. Amazing stuff. I want to hear your thoughts, though. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Miss any portion of the program, make sure you grab the podcast wherever you find your favorite podcasts. You will find ours. Interesting times, my friends. Interesting times. Quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1984. That was the day the Nestle Corporation agreed to terms in order to end a 7-year international boycott against the company. The boycott was over the unsafe and dangerous ways that Nestle marketed and sold its baby formula in third world countries. The boycott began in the United States in Minneapolis, Minnesota. It spread abroad to Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, eventually reaching 10 countries. The campaign was largely grassroots in nature, with local activists organizing different actions. In Massachusetts, boycotters ceremoniously dumped Nestle products in a Boston Nestea party. Finally, after 7 years, the grassroots organizing met its goal. Nestle agreed to follow international standards for baby formula marketing. Boycotts are an important way for consumers and workers to protest corporate practices and social injustice. There have been several very influential boycotts in our nation's history. In the 1950s, the Montgomery bus boycott challenged racial discrimination in one southern city and helped to launch the civil rights movement and empower a generation to fight for equality. In the 1960s, Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta of the United Farm Workers called for a boycott of grape and lettuce growers in California. That boycott helped to bring national attention to the fight to improve pay and working conditions for Latino farm workers in California. In the 1980s, a campaign against goods made in South Africa was a stand against that country's apartheid system. In 1984, the members of the International Longshore and Warehouse Union Local 10 refused to unload a South African ship in the port of Oakland. Their action stood as a powerful statement of international worker solidarity for racial justice. Boycotts have long helped to change the course of history as citizens stand together in solidarity.
High-dollar corporate executives and Wall Street bankers keep telling us that it's lonely at the top. Well, they should try toiling at the bottom of America's pay scale. The radical rise of inequality in our society is a function of the vast political inequality separating the working class from the power structure. The elite rich have many friends in high places, paying close attention to their needs, but the further one tumbles down the economic ladder, the lonelier you are when your interests conflict with the bosses and big shots. As Ray Charles sang, "Them that's got is them it gets." Consider waiters, bartenders, and other restaurant workers. Generally, these jobs are poorly paid and routinely abusive, yet lawmakers mostly ignore all that, cozying up to the abusers because, well, they're rich and politically connected. As a result, most of today's restaurant workers are paid a sub-minimum wage that was set 32 years ago at $2.13 an hour. That's not a wage, it's an insult. Yet most lawmakers refuse to raise it, bowing to the piles of campaign cash they get through a lobbying front called the National Restaurant Association, dominated by multi-billion-dollar food chains. Worse, in the past decade, this consortium of greedy wage suppressors even devised a diabolical scheme to make restaurant workers pay for the industry's lobbying campaigns to hold down wages. The association bought an outfit that provides hokey food safety training to workers. Then it lobbied to get California, Florida, Illinois, Texas, and other states to require that all employees not only undergo the silly online training course, but also making them pay $15 each for the training. This is Jim Hightower saying, guess what? NRA then uses these worker training fees to fund its lobbying efforts that let restaurants pay poverty wages. And that, kids, is how inequality happens.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So as we talked about yesterday on the program, if you remember our Working Class Heroes radio tour, we were in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and met up with the guys who were on strike at Ingredion. And, again, it's another one of these situations. And it's amazing to me that you get to these moments where a profitable company could easily meet the demands that the workers are asking because their demands were not anywhere near outrageous. They were just basic, hey, we need to keep up with the cost of living. Hey, we'd like to have a life outside of work. And the companies know. And this comes down to, and it's amazing to me, but it comes down to not what the companies are able to to share with their workers. It's what they're willing to share. And it's all about power. It's all about control. It's all about, hey, more for me. So when these workers stood up and said, well, we're going to withhold our labor, we're going on strike, the community supported them, other unions supported them, and now we have victory. And that's why I've asked Jason Davis to come talk with us. Jason is an international representative with the BCT GM. They represent those Ingredion workers in Cedar Rapids. Jason, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you for having me, Rick.
So walk me through this. I mean, this almost 6 months these guys and women were on strike?
It was August 1st last year. We went out on strike. Our contract expired when we ratified our contract this past Sunday. It was 175 days on strike. So yeah, it was a long, hard fought battle, and in the end, just like you said, the workers I think here can claim victory without a doubt. The offer that we voted on and that the members ratified on Sunday is a far cry from where we were on August 1st. We went, to improve wages. We were able to keep all of our bargaining unit jobs. I don't know how much you were at the beginning of the strike, but the company's initial proposals, they initiated proposals to take away our lab jobs and to take away our maintenance jobs. We kept both lab jobs and maintenance jobs in this contract. When we talked, I think it's just last week or maybe the week before, there's proposals still on the table to take vacation time away from these employees. And outside of any employee moving to a 12-hour shift, vacation remains unchanged. So we kept all of our vacation rights. We kept the system in place the way it was. We were able to make some gains on our overtime assignments, make some gains for disability, short-term disability, long-term disability, make some good gains for PPE items, work boots, bibs, things like that. So in the end, you can always. It's hard to say that anybody wins through a strike, but these members, they fought out there, and it was not for in vain. We ended up with a contract that was far better than where we were on August 1st.
And this is the part you hit on something that's really, you don't know who wins and loses in this. But what I do know is ultimately the company could have solved this problem from day one. It's you guys, from what I remember, we're not asking for the sun and the moon and things that were outrageous. You were asking for just basic decency and a bit of the profits that your labor creates. This was more about power and control, in my view, than it was about survivability or even profitability.
Absolutely, Rick. It's about it's hard to say at this point because we've ratified this contract, but it was about takeaways. And this, just like you've made mention, just like we mentioned a couple of weeks ago, this company is running record profits currently. They could have settled this contract at any point. Obviously, with the members ratifying the contract on Sunday, we're elated to be going back to work, and we're excited for the opportunity to show the company exactly why we are the workforce that we are, why we earn our benefits and our pay. Our members are just ready. They're ready to make starch again.
No, good for them. So the question that I have in this is because they did bring scabs into the plant. Are they going to keep those scabs? Replace any of your members? What's the scenario going to happen there as they go back? Because Iowa, as everyone knows, is a no rights at work state, and good on your members. As I understand, you had nobody, as I understand, crossed the picket line, or very
Correct.
few, if any, did. Most of these people they brought in were scabs from elsewhere. What happens with them?
That's correct. I mean, they'll be going back to where they are with this deal. Every single member that walked out on August 1st, and I give credit to Mike Moore, president of Local 100G. He made the mantra when we walked out on strike, everybody goes out as one and everybody goes back as one. The deal that we struck, every member that wants to return to work at Ingredion will have an opportunity to return to work at Ingredion. Obviously, I think right now in our economic state, that's part of what gives workers so much leverage, is workers have had the opportunity that even though we're going through this strike, they were able to seek other employment. They were able to seek other jobs. And there's going to be a number of members that enjoyed the other job more than where they're at here.
Yeah.
And probably stay with their other jobs. And the unfortunate part about it is, and we remain steady at the bargaining table with this, Rick, is that they're going to lose probably hundreds of years of experience.
And that's the part that amazes me. That's the part that makes me go, if you're really in this to make the best product, if you're really in this to serve your customers in the best way, why would you risk your best long-term, dedicated, loyal employees going somewhere else? Because as I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of the product that's going out is coming back because it hasn't in the past through this strike met the standards that these employees were putting out prior. Am I getting that right?
That's exactly our understanding. Is there was a most of the product that was made did not fit spec. So what they did to meet customer needs, obviously we don't know at this point, but we know for certain out of this facility they weren't getting product that makes spec, and not just that they weren't getting product to make spec. We're assured by the amount of corn that came in and product that went out, they weren't even running full production at this facility through this strike. So, what they did to get by during the 6 months, it's I guess that's here or there, but exactly it. I can tell you from experience, when we were on this same local was on strike in 2004, and I hear stories of them taking 3 to 4 years to rework bad starch through the system to get it to spec for their customers.
Wow.
I would anticipate that we're going to have a good bit of that going too, Rick.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm a shareholder, I got to be honest. If I'm a shareholder in this company or any of the ones recently that have gone on strike, because again, I'm looking at the people who have been on strike, and your union has been very aggressive in fighting for good contracts, but not obscene, not outrageous demands. Just hey, this is what we've produced. This is the profit we've produced. We'd like some of it. If I'm a shareholder, I'm looking at these CEOs and the people who are making these decisions going, maybe it's time for you to go because you don't seem to get labor management relations. You don't seem to get where the positives of having a stable workforce come from, and that is having a good product.
Well, that's it. The quality of the product they put out and just how much these workers care. We have generational workers within this plant. When I say that, I mean we have mothers and sons, or fathers and sons. We have a grandmother and her grandson works down there, and he's contemplating whether to come back. He found him a job at a good union job at UPS, and he's contemplating, do I come back or do I stick with UPS at this point? But it's a real question he's got to ask.
And the thing is that's not unusual. We were on the picket line there in Cedar Rapids with the ingredient folks, and I believe I met her. We were also at the Case New Holland strike picket lines in Burlington, Iowa, where the same thing. There was a woman there. Her son and her grandson both worked at that plant. This is a kind of a family industry. And I don't know why you would risk that kind of loyalty for pennies. I mean, and it's really what we're talking about. When you're looking at the grand scheme of how profitable these companies are, it's really pennies. So for me, and maybe you'll disagree with me, it's not really about the money. It's about the control. Because in each of these places, it was about, overtime. It was about work rules. It was about making people work 14, 12-hour days straight or some craziness like that. So it's not even really about money so much as it is about power.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Rick. And the majority of these strikes that came out, it's just like you said, we don't have outrageous demands. In a lot of cases, we fought just to keep what we had and keep what we have. We weren't coming out with outrageous demands, but you think about right now in this economy and what the workers went through in 2020 with COVID. All of the workers, all of our workers with the BCTGM work in manufacturing jobs, they were forced to come to work.
Yeah.
Through the pandemic, they came to work and did their job admirably, and turned record profits for these companies. And now they want a fair shake of that. Meanwhile, the people in the front office, the people at the corporate office, they had the option and the luxury of being able to work from home. When our members came to work, they're putting their lives at risk. They're putting their families' lives at risk through the pandemic. It's. I think that's kind of disheartening, but I think that's what's led a lot of our folks, and a lot of our members to, and a lot of union members around this country. Quite frankly, I've been at this for a little bit, and it is very inspiring to me, Rick, to see workers finally realizing just how much power they have.
Absolutely. No, you're absolutely right. And, this is one of the things I wanted to finish up with you, Jason. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Jason Davis. He's international representative with the BCTGM. You want to check out their website, bctgm.org. We'll get links out on social media, how you can take a look at that. But, for years, we've had concessionary contracts in a lot of these industries where workers were constantly having things clawed back from them. And I think management, CEOs got used to, hey, we can continually just taking and taking and taking, suppressing wages, taking benefits, shifting benefits. We'll give you a little bit of raise, but we're going to take healthcare money away. They've gotten used to that. And now in this moment coming out of the pandemic, and you're absolutely right, workers are starting to feel that power going, enough of this already. So I do expect this kind of a trend to continue into the near future. My fear here, and this is where maybe you'll have a thought, is we look at what the Federal Reserve's doing, we look what Republicans in Congress are doing. It's like they're trying to have a recession, like they're trying to create economic chaos so that, they can blame you for, hey, it's your fault. You demanded too much wages.
Well, I think kind of isn't that the Republican model? You defund them, you break it, and then you bitch that it's broken, or you complain that it's broken. I'm sorry, sorry for the listeners, and you complain that it's broken. Yeah, you can look at that. Businesses, the chambers, Republicans have been after unions for the last 40 years. We are the last bastion standing in their way of complete control.
Yep.
And they want it all. Just like you said, a lot of these companies, they just want it all. I mean, we do have good companies out there that we deal with, but these companies, as a general thumb, yeah, they're looking for it all. And it's just not right. I often say that it should be criminal what a lot of these companies do.
It should be criminal. Absolutely. The fact that you see these reports coming out. In fact, just the other day, the OSHA came out and said, Amazon did all these things, and the NLRB comes out and says Starbucks does all these things, and they're all violations of the law, and yet nobody's going to jail. I say we start locking some of these criminals up. Maybe things will change. And this is where it comes back to the politics of the day. We need good, strong, workers-friendly legislation. We need major comprehensive labor law reform in this country.
And we need to, as union members, we really need to focus on our elections and who we elected to these offices to get what we want. It's a long time coming. We have to get people into office that are going to support workers, that are going to realize the value of workers in this country. Without the workers in this country, it grinds to a halt quickly.
We learned that quickly. Last bit I got for you. Any words for those workers at Ingredion? Anything you want to say?
I just want to say thank you, and I've told them all. I couldn't have been any prouder to stand and serve with them for 175 days. For those workers at Ingredion and every worker across the country that's taken your company on to fight for what you deserve, it inspires us. I do this as a full-time job in representing workers around the country, primarily through the Midwest, and it inspires me. It truly does inspire me. And keep it up. Realize your value. You guys have the leverage. Workers have the leverage. We have the power right now, and we must take all that we can take while we have that power.
And any workers who are out there who aren't members of unions, who don't have the kind of backing that these workers had, the kind of solidarity in the workplace to fight for better wages, hours, conditions, any message for them?
Absolutely. I mean, there's power and strength in a union. Your employer may tell you this is a union, some third party coming in, but the union is you. The boss can do without any one of you. But when the boss has to do without all 125, like they did in Cedar Rapids for 6 months, it changes the story completely. You have the power right now. If you come together, you collectively bargain, you organize, the possibilities are endless. The possibilities are endless.
And if you want to check out their website, bctgm.org, we'll get links out on social media. Jason, I appreciate you taking some time for us. Congrats on the big win, and I wish you guys the best going forward.
Rick, thank you so much for your support through this and helping getting our message out. We truly appreciate it, and thank you to everybody else that's helped us out through this fight.
Good stuff. Jason Davis, international representative, is BCTGM, bctgm.org, the website, if you want to check out that there. Going to take a quick break. Right back after this with your thoughts. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk. Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1950. The minimum wage in the United States was raised to 75 cents an hour. This move nearly doubled the minimum wage from the previous 40 cents an hour. More than 22 million people were directly eligible for the wage increase. In his statement on the change, President Harry S. Truman declared, "It is a measure dictated by social justice. It adds to our economic strength. It is founded on the belief that full human dignity requires at least a minimum level of economic sufficiency and security." If the minimum wage had kept pace with inflation since 1950, it would now be over $10 an hour. The last time the federal government raised the minimum wage was 2009. It currently stands at a meager $7.25 an hour. Given the overwhelming Republican control of Congress and the enormous cash outlays by corporate lobbyist groups like the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the National Restaurant Association, and others, it's doubtful that Congress will take up the question of raising the minimum wage anytime soon. Yet, next year, 21 states will raise their minimum wage. More than 3 million people will see a raise because of the state's measures. In 4 states, Alaska, Arkansas, Nebraska, and South Dakota, voters passed ballot measures to raise the minimum wage. In total, 29 states in the District of Columbia will have a higher minimum wage than the federal level. Washington State will have the highest state minimum wage at $9.47 per hour. Yet most states still lag well behind inflation. If the minimum wage is a measure dictated by social justice, where do we as a nation measure up? And what of Truman's call for human dignity? To date, only 2 presidents have failed to raise the minimum wage since its inception: Republican Ronald Reagan and Democrat Barack Obama. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2. Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. Look, we've been talking about these striking workers, and there are strikes going on across the country where it's almost the same model. And the frame that's been thrown out by the right-wing messaging machine, the anti-labor message machine, is these greedy workers, they just want more. And their insatiable appetite for more never ends. They want more health care. They want more retirement. They want more vacation. They just want more. They're greedy. They're greedy, those workers are. You go, hold on. What are you talking about? You got CEOs who are making tens of millions of dollars a year telling someone who's actually doing the work of producing the product and have dedicated their time and basically their lives to this pursuit, saying, no, a quarter an hour, 50 cents an hour, wow, too much. Sorry, an extra $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a year. That's greed that we cannot allow. Let that sink in for a minute. The messaging that we're sold when workers say, hey, you know what? We want better wages. We want better conditions. We want better benefits. We want health security for ourselves and our families. Because look, this has been going on for years. And sadly, our laws are so broken. The pendulum of power has swung well to the side of corporations. And what you have is a media empire, a media echo chamber that beats up on these workers anytime they go on strike. Because they're being greedy. If they don't like it, this is my favorite one. My favorite one. If they don't like it, they should go somewhere else. And you go, but understand the Business Roundtable. Understand, big corporations kind of collude around the idea that we're not going to have a wage race, which is why these non-compete agreements sprung up all over the place, which is why a fast food restaurant has a non-compete that they want their employees to believe applies to them. Because, making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, that's proprietary. It's all in how you use the knife and slide the peanut butter on the bread. That's special. We taught you that. You can't take that across the street. And why? Because they don't want you going across the street chasing nickels. They don't want you going and saying, hey, I can get a better wage over here, and them having to pay you more to keep you. No, that's not how it works. We like to believe it is. We like to believe that there's competition and workers can go in individually and negotiate their own good deal. We love to believe that. Problem is it's not reality for the vast majority of working people in this country. So when they come together and they say, you know what, we demand better treatment. Our media culture says, well, look at these greedy workers. How dare they? How dare they? They could go somewhere else. Well, the problem is there's nowhere else to go. This is where this moment, the leverage is now swung a little bit, not a lot, a little bit onto the side of working people. The economy's a little tight. All of the media people are crying and complaining. Nobody wants to work anymore. They're all lazy. Nobody wants to work. Now, understand, this is a frame that's been going 100 years plus. Anytime workers are going, no, we're not going to work for poverty wages and desperate conditions. No, we're going to not put our lives on the line so that you can make more off of our backs. No, anytime that happens, they pull out the nobody wants to work anymore. It's not true. People want to work. People just don't want to work for poverty wages. People don't want to work and make somebody who's the hardest job they do all day is moving money from one pocket to the other, from yours to theirs. But we keep hearing that frame. Our unions are only about the bosses. They're greedy. They want more. Keep buying that. Because it's going to get us right where we've gotten over the last 40 years. Concessionary contract after concessionary contract. Workers afraid to go on strike. And now we've got a Supreme Court who's going to try and put that in the law by ensuring that corporate America, when they do lose money, because understand, these companies, no matter how they cook the books, the product that they're sending out the door is garbage most of the time. When they bring these scabs in who don't know what they're doing, there's a huge learning curve. And those products are terrible. Now, here's the interesting part of what the Supreme Court wants to do. And this is where, again, we're seeing a rise in the number of workers saying we've had enough. We're going to withhold our labor. We're going on strike. The Supreme Court's going to come in, and I already think it's been decided, but they're going to come in and they're going to say, well, you cost the company money. They can sue you for it. And then you're going to see concessionary offers out the wazoo, because the pendulum will have swung even further in the side of the corporations. And I've had people go, but Rick, most small businesses, they can't afford this. I'm not talking about small businesses. Ingredion is not a small business. Case New Holland is not a small business. John Deere, definitely not small. UPS, if a strike comes this summer, most certainly not a small business. Your small mom and pops in town should want strong labor unions. They should want people who have discretionary funding in their pocket. You know why? So they can come into a small business and keep them afloat. I've had people go, you can't unionize two people. No, you can't. You got to have at least three. So this is one of those moments where, again, they keep trying to confuse with what we're talking. We're talking about ensuring that workers, one, have rights, share in the wealth that their labor creates, dignity, respect on the job, safety, a future, and this idea that we work so that we have the ability to pay for our living, that we work to live, instead of what corporate America seems to want us to do, which is to live to work. Question is where are you? And this is where I want to hear thoughts. And you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com, and tell me what you think on where we're heading into the future. Will we see more strikes? Will we see more workers feeling their oats, so to speak, and being willing to stand up and say, you know what, we've given enough over these 40 years. They've clawed back enough. Because I'm old enough to remember when overtime after 8 hours was the norm. Think about that. They've completely changed what was the norm on healthcare, on retirement security, on wages. How much more are they going to take? I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.